For some reason, compression often gets labeled as being difficult to understand. In this video, I will go through each single function that all compressors have so that you fully understand them, meaning that you would then be able to use them properly on your music. This is an example of what an audio file looks like after you've recorded it or when you import it into your DAW. Each one of these are called transients. Basically, the bigger they are, the louder they are, and the smaller they are, the quieter they are. And in simple terms, what a compressor does is it compresses the loudness of those transients by how much you want to reduce it. First, there is threshold, and this tells your compressor at what level it's going to start manipulating your audio and reducing the volume of your transients. In this diagram, you can see that the threshold has been dropped down so that the top of the transient is affected, and that is the signal or the volume that is going to be compressed by your compressor. And any signal below that line will be unaffected. Next, we have ratio, and ratio determines how much proportionally gets reduced from the level or the volume or the signal of the transient above the threshold. So we have the threshold level, and then it will set a ratio to how much the volume will be reduced. And the more I'm increasing that, as you can see, the more it's reducing. In this diagram, we can see the threshold set at -9 dB, but the audio signal at -8. That means that the audio is going over the threshold by 1 dB. So if we set our ratio at 1:1, we still get 1 dB over. If we set our ratio at 2:1, we get half of the 1 dB because we've done 2:1. And then as you go higher and higher on the ratio, you'll be able to reduce more and more of that above the threshold volume. And then there's one other school of thought that will help you remember how much reduction happens on the ratios. And that is 2:1 means 2 dB becomes 1 dB, 4:1 means 4 dB becomes 1 dB, etc., etc. So on this particular loop, you can definitely hear that the kick and snare are really loud. But then on the right hand side here, you can see what the kind of levels are and where the lower levels are. So you can see when you're adjusting your threshold, you can see, right, okay, so I'm going to be affecting those transients. So you can see exactly which transients you want to affect and which you don't. And then you just apply the ratio. So you just apply the ratio, and the higher the ratio is, the more it reduces. Next up is attack. So attack is all about how quickly does the compressor start compressing once you go over your threshold. So I've set this at a ridiculous rate for us to work with, but then at least you can see what it does. So as you can see, with the attack set to really fast, that kick is reducing quickly. And you can hear that very clearly, definitely. So, but what will happen now is once I start moving that to slow, you will hear some of the start of that kick kind of pushing through a little bit. You hear it go louder and louder because you're telling it not to compress at the start of the transient, but compress slightly behind it. So have a listen. So basically on a fast attack, as soon as that transient goes above the threshold, you can see that straight away the gain reduction is happening instantly. But then if you go to the slow attack, when the transient goes above the threshold, you can see that the reduction starts happening slower. So therefore you're hearing more of this sound louder, and then it drops. So it's giving you the start of that transient more. And now let's get on to release. So release is basically how quickly or how slowly does it come from being compressed back to non-compressed. So the transient is going above the threshold, and then as soon as that transient level drops under the threshold, how quickly or how slowly does the compression then return to uncompressed. So as you can see with the red graph, you can see, because I've got it set to fast attack, that the attack is happening very quickly. And the release is actually going quickly as well, because I've got that on fast as well. So you can see that coming back up really quickly each time, flicking back up very quickly. So once I start moving this knob to the right now and go to slow, you will see that return to normal gain is going to happen slower and slower. Just watch. You can hear it as well. And the last but not least is the knee. The knee is a setting which tells the compression to kick in either hard or soft. So if you look at this graph, you can see that the signal on the hard knee will go straight up to where the threshold is and then apply the compression immediately. Or if you put a soft knee, the soft knee will basically go, okay, that's the adjustment you want to do. Well, I'll make that soft. Therefore, it will slowly start reducing from before the threshold and then slowly curve to where you wanted it to be. And that's called a knee width. Right, so we're still compressing quite hard. I will move the fader from hard to soft knee very quickly so you can hear the difference. You will find that soft knee definitely makes the compression softer and more transparent. So it's almost like you can't really hear it as aggressively. It's not as spiky. So you'll hear what I mean. And that brings us to the end of the video. There are a number of manufacturers that offer different functionalities in their plugins, which can be very handy and useful. But this video is about you understanding how to use compression in the first place. So get to using this, get to understanding what I've said in here. If you have any questions or if anything's unclear, please message me and I'll get straight back to you and I'll try and explain it in a different way that might work better for you. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe and press the bell for future content, and I hope to see you soon.